Hello, marketers. Welcome to Awaken Career Chat. I'm your host, Lydia Huang, founder and marketing career consultant at Awaken Career. My mission is to share more marketing knowledge, recruitment, insights, and job search tips to empower more marketing professionals in their careers. Today, I invited Daryl Alfonso, lead marketing operations at Amazon, to share his marketing career and hiring experience with all of us. Daryl has over 10-year marketing experience, and he is now specialized in marketing operations, which later on we are going to dive in to learn more about his passion in this specific field. And also in this interview, he is also going to share his hiring experience to give some of the career advice to professionals who are ready for their next move. So with that, I would like to have Daryl to briefly introduce himself.
Hey, thanks, Lydia. Thanks for having me. Big fan of your content on LinkedIn. I think you're saying such a good message out to job seekers and marketers alike. So thanks for having me. So I lead marketing operations at Amazon Web Services, which is the cloud computing division of Amazon. The way that I like to think of our team is we manage and own the marketing technology that powers thousands of marketers worldwide to help create delightful experiences for our customers. I'm a big enthusiast. I love marketing, and specifically, I have a fascination with marketing automation and marketing operations. So it's a little bit more on the technical side, but as you know, with the world becoming increasingly more digital and the management of marketing requiring a lot of, data-driven sort of strategies and data-driven insights, I really think it's the future. And I really think that, I always say that you can change your marketing strategy very easily, but it's very difficult to change your marketing execution. It's difficult to actually get the job done when you want it to. And, I think that is why I focus heavily on marketing operations and heavily on the actual doing of marketing. So that's a little bit about me.
I have not heard of that perspective, so I'm really curious about that. I guess my first question for you, Daryl, I want to learn what's the difference between marketing automation and also marketing operation?
Yeah, so to get a little bit technical, automation is sort of the programmatic execution of many of the promotional aspects of marketing. So you think of automating your emails and automating your lead management processes and your handoff to sales. So you're programmatically handling those activities, and that's what we consider marketing automation. Now, while automation is a big job, it's actually only one component of the overall marketing operations charter. So marketing operations handles all of the tools, all of the processes, and all of the metrics that makes really great marketing work. So I feel that marketing automation is actually a subset of marketing operations. So another way to think about it is marketing operations we're the team that oversees all of it, and marketing automation is one of the things that we do.
Okay, interesting. I think that's a good clarification, because for me, I thought that's totally different stuff, but it sounds like it's actually in the same buckets. But of course, you're the expert, so I appreciate that you actually explain what's the difference between these two. I actually have another question about this, because I have one client that she currently works in a smaller company. And I wonder that when we talk about marketing operation or marketing automation, does that only happen, I guess, most of the time happen in like bigger enterprise like Amazon, or have you, work in a smaller company and also see those marketing operation or automation?
So that's a really good question. So what tends to happen is the bigger your organization, the more you start to specialize. So, in an extreme example, let's say you're a one person marketing team, well, then you do it all. You know, you'll do, not only will you do the branding and the positioning and the messaging, but you actually do the execution of the campaigns, the management of the marketing database, and all the reporting. So in addition to marketing operations, for example, you also do all of marketing. And with any company, and actually with most jobs, as the company gets larger and larger and you add additional headcount, because of the growth in the number of customers and prospects and the growth in the amount of data that you have to manage, you naturally start to hire people to handle those activities in a specialized way. So they're both equally important regardless of the company size. However, if you wanted a career and you only want to do one thing, like marketing automation or marketing operations specifically, and not do anything else, that tends to be for larger companies, because they have the resources to allow people to specialize on just one or two things.
And when we talk about specializing like marketing operations, would you say that it's because bigger company, they have more money that can invest into the tools, so that can create a automated process, or it's just really because that, you know, someone like you already have those like 10-year work experience, so you understand the whole process in marketing, and that's why you have this qualification to do this work. I guess help the audience understand, you know, if they eventually want to become a marketing operations specialized in this specific field, what's a really important skills that they need?
Yeah, you know, I will say that if you do specialize in skills like marketing automation and, let's say, data science and analytics, and maybe, you know, even some, you know, surface level technical marketing or web development, I think there's a really high demand for those types of roles. So it makes it makes the competition, I think it cuts down on the competition a little bit and helps you stand out. So that's one of the benefits of specialization. And I think that you know, an easy pick is to master one of the marketing automation platforms. And I'm talking about Marketo, HubSpot, Pardot, Eloqua. One of those large platforms. I personally think that if you can get a certification, if you can prove that you have expertise in managing one of those platforms at scale, I think that you'll always have a job and you'll never really worry about that. I actually have been so fortunate to have experienced that early on when I, you know, first gained expertise. And I've done Marketo my entire career. And ever since I sort of established myself as a subject matter expert, I've always had options. And that's very, you know, as you know, it's a very freeing and liberal and liberating feeling to have options. So I will say that. Now, I think that that being said, I do think that you need to sort of move toward what you really like doing and what you really excel at. And I think that if you search hard enough, you can find it. For me, I do enjoy the technical side, but it's a nice blend of, you know, the strategic sort of business perspective around marketing operations. And I tend to lean toward that versus more of the technical systems management. So I feel like that nice blend gives me kind of a leadership role, gives me a higher perspective, and you know, some very interesting, you know, thoughts. As you know, I like to put out articles and content around what I think about the industry. So for me, that's a nice fit, and I think that for everyone, there's a nice blend that they can find for themselves.
Yes, I can totally tell now why you are so passionate about marketing operation, right? You actually answered one of my questions, so thank you for that. And I want to dive into more your hiring experience because you have over 10-year marketing experience. So I'm sure you have a lot of a chance to kind of involve into the hiring process and interview lots of marketing talents. So I guess my first question for you, I want to learn what kind of positions that you've been hired before.
Yeah. So I would say, kind of a variety. So I've definitely earlier on in my career used to hire actually sales development talent and junior level marketers. And I think that has always been I definitely enjoy that because a lot of it doesn't necessarily lean on experience, but more of culture fit and attitude and um, sort of what their perspective is. And I love that combination of being quietly confident in your skills, but also being open to learn. And I think that's something that I kind of narrow in on, especially in more of the entry level or more junior positions. I think that more recently, more recently, we are looking for more experienced marketers with the technical expertise, I think, to be able to manage large marketing programs at scale. And that's always tricky. So I think that over time, it definitely becomes like a blend and a mix of, do you have based on your past performance, can you show that you can deliver results? And that's part of it. And then the second piece, and this is something that I learned heavily when I started working at Amazon, is do you embody the leadership principles? And you might have heard about the Amazon leadership principles, but I will tell you, it's 100% accurate in the way that we hire, in the way that we promote, and in what we look for people. It's all based on I think there's 16 of them now, 16 leadership principles. And I'm happy to talk about any of them or how kind of like check for those if you want.
Yeah, please do, because I think that when I joined Amazon, I was in recruitment team. So it's probably a little bit different, but I agree with you, like the hiring talents really based on those, now you say 16 leadership principles. I would like to know, maybe in your field or in your like team or your department, what kind of a leadership principle you think is the most important?
So I think there's three that I'll focus on. There's customer obsession, deliver results, and then dive deep are some of my favorites. And I think that at any company, these are very telling questions. And the questions always center around, and they're behavioral, as you know, they're behavioral questions. And behavioral means, tell me an example of a time when a customer was unhappy and you had to resolve their issue. Tell me what you did and what happened. And our belief is that past performance is a great indicator of future performance. So we want them to, and we also are very data driven. So we don't want candidates to theoretically answer questions like, what would you do in this scenario? What would you do in this scenario? We want to know what they did specifically. And I think that there's some advantages there. One is, they have to demonstrate or, articulate the proof points. But the other one is you can poke holes in people's stories very easily if you're asking them about specific things that happened. And you being in the in the sort of talent field, that sometimes people overrepresent themselves, and it's a little bit hard to keep your story straight. If it's hard to really overrepresent yourself if people are asking very specific questions about projects that you worked on. So that's why I like that. And another thing is, and I'm guilty of this too, sometimes if you ask very basic questions like, tell me about a time that you went above and beyond for a customer, it's hard to kind of come up with that, especially if you're just working in your own day-to-day. And I think that I like questions like those. And I often like to remember those times because I feel like they help me get better at work too. They help me think, even when I'm working, well, how could we go above and beyond for customers, whether those are our customers that we're marketing to, or our internal stakeholders. So that's, I think, one of my favorite questions is, how do you tell me about a time that you have gone above and beyond for customers? And my advice is, especially when you're preparing for interviews, you need to really think about and outline your stories, and get them straight, and make sure that you have them all detailed out, because not only at Amazon, people don't like fluffy answers. You really want to be clear about the results that you drove and how you did it.
I love that. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Storytelling is so important. I've been telling all of my clients, and also, when I was a recruiter, I tell my candidates that your job is helping the interviews to envision that you're the right candidate for the role, right? So it's a storytelling. And that's why having the real examples will help them to remember you, instead of just giving, like you say, generic answer. And I will be honest with you, when I was with Amazon, I was constantly seeing those feedback from interviewers, and I would say probably 80% of the time when hiring managers or interviewers say, oh, this is not the right candidate, the reason is because they didn't give concrete examples. Yeah. That's probably the top 3 reasons people got rejected. And still, people still not understand how to leverage that storytelling, so I'm so glad you actually point that out.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's definitely tough, especially if you have to remember something that you did a long time ago, and that's why I think that it's good to review your past performance, and remember, and we were talking about this before hopping on the call, but the documentation,
yes.
Every time you finish a project, put it in your portfolio, write down what happened, so you can review, and you can almost relive the great stuff that you did, but also it comes in handy later on when you need to recount it or retell it to somebody else.
Yeah, and then this is actually one of the things that I learned from my job search experience, because when I was transitioning my career from sales into recruiting, I just didn't really got a chance to get into like a full-time role. So I was like having 3 different contract roles. So I have to always prepare to go into the job market again to find another job. So that give me the chance to actually practice how to document my task. And every time when I did something like really good, I get like kudos from maybe hiring managers or my manager or teammates. I just have this huge like Google Doc to have all the examples there, because I'm always prepared. And that's why I want to suggest the audience here, whenever you have that time, you got kudos, you got shout out, don't just like enjoy that moment, but document it, because we are we have so many things that we have to remember, and sometimes when those important moment come and we can't give the concrete example, then you actually miss out the opportunities. So I'm really appreciate that you point this out there, Ro.
Yeah. I think that it's such an important thing. And, and I slightly mentioned this earlier, but, it feels good to go back through that stuff. Sometimes I think that that's where imposter syndrome comes from sometimes, is when you forget all of the great work that you've done in the past, especially if you have a few years of experience. If you're a hard worker, chances are you've accomplished some great things. And, time and time again, we just forget, just because we get so focused on the now and the fires that we have to put out. So, yeah, I think it's another good thing to do.
Yeah, good practice to avoid burnout. I think that's a good point. Okay, so I want to know that you have a lot of a chance to interview marketing professionals, and I want to know what kind of questions that you usually ask during the interview.
So I think a couple of things. I think that, again, the questions are going to be around past performance. So it's always going to be framed around, tell me about an example when. But I am curious about their marketing automation expertise, their ability to manage and work with, whether it's many stakeholders or many different teams. I think that that's also really important. I think that so often we get caught up in just doing our own job, and we forget that, business is a team sport. You have to work with people and through people to get things done. And I think that, and especially at the enterprise level, you really need strong soft skills. You need strong people skills to be able to get your ideas across and to get your projects across the finish line. So in addition to those technical skills, I'm asking about times when they've had to work with difficult stakeholders, difficult customers, to actually get their work done, and to tell me how they did it, and what was the result. So I definitely focus around those. I think that, I also love to dive deep into some technical issues around database management, examples of if they've encountered data issues before, and how they solved it, to kind of get their thought process around, some of the more, I think, deeper system issues. I think those are some of the ones that I like to ask as well. One thing though that I like to give advice about is that, especially at Amazon, we like to ask really tough follow-up questions. So we like to poke holes in people's initial answers. And regardless as if you're interviewing at Amazon or not, I think that it's important to stay calm and to stay focused on the question and the answer, and to stay confident in what you believe and what you think. Because the worst thing that you can do when you start to falter, or when you start to feel pressure in the interview, is panic, and then either make something up or start talking in a way where the answers don't make sense. So, and that happens because of nerves and because of the pressure. But if you stay calm, and if you really think about the question, as if a friend was asking for you the question, or as if a person was just curious about the work that you did, that sort of calmness and clarity, I think, will really help you. And sometimes you don't have to be embarrassed about an answer. I don't think that you need to lie about yourself or overrepresent yourself. I think you need to answer the question as best to your ability, and feel confident in your answers. And that'll take you way farther than if you panic or if you try to make something up. So I think that'd be my advice about some of the tougher questions that you have.
Yeah, and I want to get one of your perspective, because as lots of job seekers, they are nervous about interview, right? So sometimes they feel like they are not perform the best of themselves. And I wondered that from your perspective, if someone who is really nervous at that moment, and they tell you that, I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. Can I just get a little minute to think about your question and get back to you later? Yeah. What would be your thoughts? Would you feel like, oh, this person is just like an authentic person? Or would you, well, because I do have a client ask me, would this be something that show your weakness, that you can't think quickly? Or will they have a different, thoughts about, when I'm being honest, that I'm just nervous? So what will be your perspective?
I personally don't think nerves are negatively impact the candidate or their evaluation. And I think that, one of the things that I've learned, especially from great hiring managers, and especially from the way that we interview at Amazon, is we try to cut that out by, having pretty standard questions, not trying to, for example, we keep chit chat short. we like do a number of things that sort of take away the variation, and it's very much just a question and an answer. And I think that helps, versus them feeling like they need to impress the interviewer. So I definitely like that. And some of the great things that I've seen other hiring managers do is try to find ways to take away the nerves, whether if they have to solve a problem, maybe they'll leave the room so they can work on a problem, or try to give them a little bit more time, or have somebody else ask them the question. I think that you can get creative about it. That's my opinion. I will say that depending on your role, it can hurt you, and I think that that's just unfortunate. If you're looking at a leadership role, if you're looking at a sales role, if you're looking at a role where you're expected to be able to think quickly on your feet and be super confident, I think unfortunately it can hurt you, because not everyone views the process like myself. Maybe you feel the same, and maybe if someone gets nervous, it doesn't bother you because it doesn't bother me. But not everyone thinks like that. And I think it's just practice. I think that you have to. I think the nerves come in, and I think candidates get a little bit too in their heads, and I know that. It's the same with public speaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of public speaking, but sometimes, I will get really in my head, and I'll think like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, even though you've done it, or even though you can do it. So, I'm a big like believer in like getting psyched up, and being calm, and like saying like positive affirmations to myself, like I can do it,
Same.
so do whatever you have to do, but
Yeah.
try to calm yourself down, get into a good headspace. And I think that that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, you can only try your best, right? And like you say, everyone have different perspective. You can only control what you can control. You can't control everyone, right? And even me and Daryl not really thinking about nervous as the weakness, because I don't think that should be, because sometimes people, they have a personality, they have to take some quiet moment to think, to process, and then give you the best answer. And you can say that's a negative things, right? Especially, I think, especially with a more technical role, the thought process sometimes come a little bit slow, which is totally fine. So I'm really glad that you being transparent about your perspective, and thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you the final questions, which I wonder, what's the one advice that you would like to tell marketing job seekers, just from your perspective?
Yeah. So, my favorite piece of advice is I actually think that you can do a great job preparing for your job interview by focus on doing better at your job every day. And here's what I mean by that. I think that, because especially at Amazon, we ask about prior performance. And, so the best way to come up with great stories is to do great things and to deliver great results. And it doesn't have to be at a large scale. It could be helping a customer, helping a stakeholder, reducing costs, finding ways to drive revenue. Those are all great things. And if you keep your mind focused on delivering results, you'll naturally come up with really great stories. And it becomes much easier to prepare for an interview if you've been preparing all along. And that's the sort of mentality that I think about, and the mentality that I sort of advocate to job seekers, is to do great work. And a lot of these things would naturally fall into place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, always go above and beyond at your job. I think not just put your heads down to do work, but think what else can you do, right? Because this is not only going to impact your current role, but also your future careers. So I think always have that long-term thoughts in your mind will be super helpful. Just will take you far in your career as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Love that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Daryl, to come into this interview. You shared lots of great insights. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure the audience here can learn so much from this interview. So if you like about this interview series, please don't forget to follow me and Daryl on LinkedIn, and I will see you next time.
Thanks, Lydia.